Alright, evening everybody. Today is March 1st, 2020, and this is Steve doing another video for you today. Before we jump into everything, please forgive the noise that you probably hear in the background. My jerk-off neighbor downstairs is playing his music too loud, so I figure I'd put up with it for a little bit and then see what happens. If I go to bed and I'm still having to listen to that crap, then I'll probably do something about it. But we'll just kind of say, we'll just kind of deal with it for right now. Anyways, I wanted to do this originally as a PowerPoint presentation, but it seems that my PowerPoint program isn't quite operating the way it is. So I guess I'm just going to have to turn this into the actual video for the channel as opposed to posting a PowerPoint up. So today's topic is going to be on using stones and crystals in our magical practices. And before we jump into that, of course, if you are a subscriber to my channel, I do appreciate that very much. And if you have not already subscribed, the subscribe button should be below or to the left or right of your screen there. And if you do like the type of videos that I'm putting out, please hit the like button down below and leave some comments for me, whether they are positive or negative. I look forward to reading all of my comments. So I have been trying to answer questions on my channel a little bit today as well as get this presentation out, and it's been kind of a busy day for me, so kind of just bear with me if I haven't gotten to checking my YouTube channel as of yet. So again, the topic for today, using stones and crystals in magical practices. In this presentation, we're going to discuss some basic information on crystals and stones, putting crystals or stones into jewelry, such as necklaces, rings, pendants, and that sort of stuff. We're also going to talk about cleansing, consecrating, charging stones that are associated to the Zodiac, or what we like to term as birthstones, and then some recommended reading. Now, of course, I do want to go ahead and point out that this is simply just a presentation. It's going to be, consider it like a primer, folks. There's a lot of information on this type of stuff, a lot of information on the internet, a lot of books on this type of stuff. This is not going to go ahead and cover everything. For instance, in the jewelry section, I just cover things like rings and necklaces and ornaments such as headpieces or crowns, tiaras, stuff like that. But nowhere do I touch on all types of jewelry or anything like that. This is just to be giving you a primer so that you can go out, and if you decide to go ahead and use this type of information into your practices and add using crystals and stones and stuff like that, then you're able to go forth with a little bit of knowledge to begin with, and then do your own research at that point, and you'll start developing that into your normal everyday practice. Okay? And of course, at the end of this reading, as I said before, I always try to give you a little bit of recommendation on a reading list there if you want to go ahead and check that out. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into the video then. Now, the world of semi-precious stones and crystals is quite an interesting one. People have been fascinated with their appearance and beauty for thousands of years, if not tens of thousands of years, and their presence has enchanted millions across the globe. Some have been held as sacred stones to cultures, sects, religious groups, and some have been used as offerings to gods and goddesses and revered for their beauty Others have been used frequently as currency for trading of goods and services, and some have been used to make weapons and other functional objects within cultures. Today's most widely used crystal that's probably known by most is the quartz crystal, of course, and simply the quartz crystal is composed of silicon and oxygen, and these two basic components make up some of the ingredients in our planet itself, as well as humans. Okay, so these basic building blocks are inside all of us, which is probably why we have such an attraction between crystals and stones normally that inhabit our Earth. And stones and crystals, including metals, are often referred to as having qualities and associations or correspondences to things such as planets and the Zodiac and different things like that. And we'll use that, or we'll get to that in just a few moments. For instance, the garnet has a lot of lore behind it. It's believed to have been a protective stone and protected travelers from accidents and mishaps, and is also said to protect those during sleeping and to protect them from bad dreams and nightmares. And it also does appear in the Bible as the gem that King Solomon adorns within his breastplate. In addition to that, the garnet has also been used by has been used as bullets, most notably in the rebellion of India in 1892, and the garnet also does come from the Greek word meaning pomegranate, which is associated to the Greek myth surrounding Persephone when she eats I guess it depends which version of the mythology you read. Some say she eats 3 pomegranate seeds, and some say she eats 6. But if you're familiar with it, you know what I'm talking about. And of course, the garnet is also seen as a red stone, but it does come in other varieties such as green and yellow and brown, and the garnet is associated with the zodiac signs of Leo, Virgo, Capricorn, and Aquarius. And when it comes to information and stone information on crystals and stones and gems here, they simply fall into 2 categories. You have precious and semi-precious stones. And the way that those are divided is that according to the U.S. Trade Commission, the only stones that are considered precious are emeralds, sapphires, rubies, and diamonds. Everything else falls into the category of semi-precious. And we're going to talk a little bit about jewelry at this point, jewelry and the power of the stones and how you can use them, for instance. And one of the best ways that we can tap into the power of stones and crystals is through jewelry, wearing them, necklaces, rings, pendants, toe rings, things like that, belt buckles, all sorts of little trinkets there. And the jewelry made with precious and semi-precious stones and crystals obviously can be purchased through jewelry stores, occult shops, other online resources. And for instance, if you want to be a better communicator, it is suggested that you wear a necklace or a choker, and that necklace or choker should be made out of silver, copper, or gold for the chain. And within that chain you set pearls, and pearls are said to help boost your self-esteem and your sociability. Another form of jewelry, rings. Rings do represent a lot of things to different people and cultures. They represent unity, eternity, for instance, such as with the wedding ring, the wedding band there, reincarnation, safety, union, power, and energy. And it's said that if you wear, when you're wearing a ring, they suggest that the bottom side of the ring, where the gem protrudes through the middle itself. It's supposed to be left open to allow better connection between the stone and the skin. That way you receive the energy of the stone a lot better. However, a number of years back when I was practicing pranic healing, and I still do on occasion right now, but when I was in a class, our instructor and our teacher at the time had said not to have the jeweler do that, not to leave that open space on the bottom part of the ring so that the gem would touch your finger, because as the energy flows through the gem, it goes through the gem and energizes the finger, which can cause problems, like particularly like in joints, causes arthritis because it gets over energized and stuff like that. You can try it however you want, folks. If you want to get, two different rings, or a ring made two different ways, try it out and see what happens for you. I'm just kind of on the fence with that, so with that idea myself. And also, rings worn on the left hand awaken and release emotions, while rings on the right hand enhance your career and personal goals. So you never, ever want to wear a ring on your thumb, for instance. This does block the flow of energy or chi to the thumb, and it can also bring out egotism and selfishness in the person if they wear a ring on their thumb for far too long. Index fingers also are indicators of achievement, and middle fingers are about ideas, insight, and intuition. The middle finger on the left hand represents achieving your ideas, receiving ideas, while the one on the right hand represents action and achievement. And notably regarding crowns, tiaras, any type of headwear, kings and queens often, of course, as we know, wore crowns, and they still do, which often appear radiant with a multitude of gems, and they're quite fascinating to look at, of course. And wearing a crown or tiara has been said to bring the energy of the gems onto the brow of the bearer. Okay, and today's modernization, of course, we're probably not going to walk into our job, wearing a crown or a tiara, but today's modernization would be barrettes and hair clips, and you can simply attach stones to them, or probably buy them with stones already attached to them. Wearing a piece of jewelry that touches the third eye is said to stimulate your intuition and compassion. However, do this in moderation, because it does lead to exhausting your center of intuition. And there we are. We're going to touch a little bit on metals here really quick. Gold, for instance, whether it's yellow or white, is an excellent energy conductor, enhances the power of the gem or stone that's mounted in it. It does provide it with a type of quickening energy, it energizes it. Okay, gold is said to help with arthritis, blood and circulation problems, along with mental and emotional issues, and wearing gold also brings you courage and self-esteem and helps you with a continuous flow of wealth into your life. And we're going to touch on silver a little bit here at this point. Silver is about communication and has been associated with the moon for thousands of years, and is also a stabilizer for any gem or stone that is set in it. Therefore, it supports the gem as opposed to energizing it, such as gold would, as we already mentioned. And silver is said to be a healing metal, and therefore it should not be worn at all times. Okay, women used to wear silver cords around their waist to improve their fertility. Men can also improve their fertility simply by wearing silver belt buckles in order to treat things such as impotence and sexual dysfunctions. Okay, let's see. Stones that are suitable to be placed in silver are moonstones, amethyst, jaspers, agates, and especially the fire agate and opals. And it said that if you mount a sapphire, lapis lazuli, or emerald or pearl within a silver ring, or yeah, in this case a ring, sorry, you will attract love. Okay, stones that you should never, ever, ever, ever put inside a silver setting would be zircon, tourmaline, and amber. And finally, to complete the subject of jewelry here, um, the list of stones that you should never ever set together in any type of metal, regardless of what it is, as these stones will cancel each other out. They are carnelian counteracts amethyst, lapis lazuli counteracts blue lace agate, lapis lazuli also counteracts turquoise, turquoise counteracts malachite, and diamonds counteract turquoise. Okay, and I believe that's it on that one. And we're going to get to the subject of cleansing here really quick. Give me just a moment. I'm going to get a drink of water. Alrighty, and we're back. And so, again, subject of cleansing your crystals. Before we jump into that, little side story again. A number of years back, when I was in the Framingham, Massachusetts, I was taking a crystal healing class for my alternative medicine practice, and we were in the class, and our instructor is talking about people going into gem shops, jewelry shops, and new age shops and whatnot, buying crystals. And he poses the question: does it matter what type of crystal you get? Well, within depending on your situation, obviously. But at this point, we were talking about using the laser crystals for our healing practice. And he says, does it really matter what type of crystal you get from the shop? And a lot of people kept saying, oh yeah, you should get a crystal that's going to resonate with you. You should get a crystal that feels good. People just throwing out different things, and I'm watching the instructor, and he's shaking his head. He's like, no. And finally, I spoke up and I said, no, it doesn't matter what kind of crystal you get, because you're going to go home and cleanse it regardless before you use it. And that's, of course, the correct answer, folks. So, I walk into like a lot of these new age shops and occult shops, and you always you know the people that are there. They're looking at the crystals and they're picking them up, and they're like, oh, this one feels so happy to me. Oh, this one resonates with me so much. Oh, it wants to go home with me. Blah blah blah. Folks, if you're gonna just go in and buy crystals, just pick out whatever. Like, if you need to buy like 5 rose quartz crystals, just go in there and pick up 5 rose quartz crystals and walk out. Because as I said, you're going to go home and cleanse these things, okay, which is going to pretty much wash away all of the psychic garbage that people have just puked all over all these, from sitting in the shops. And they're going to reset, and then you're going to consecrate them for your purpose. So you don't need to be wasting a whole lot of time, unless if you really want some specific ones, based on shape, for instance, then, I could probably see spending maybe a little bit of time. But just all you really need to do is walk in and get what you need and walk out. That's it, You don't need to spend a whole lot of time in there, coughing up your psychic stuff all over crystals that people are going to be buying. So anyways, back to cleansing. The saltwater method is what I call it. And of course, this is pretty typical, especially in our magical practices and pagan practices. People typically get stuff. They get a bowl, they put some salt in it, sea salt usually, a little bit of water, usually purified water, because I don't know a lot of people use tap water for stuff like this. And they mix it up and they consecrate the water, and then they drop their stones in it and they leave them for a few days. Okay. So again, that's just what it sounds like. That's the saltwater method. A lot of people leave them there for like 2 or 3 days. If you're in a hurry, some people might just leave them for 10 or 12 hours. But again, the whole idea is to dissolve the psychic garbage that people have puked up all over the stones. You also want to do this, of course, if you're getting this stuff through an online source as well. Any type of online source, you want to go ahead and cleanse your stuff. Okay, and the next one is what I call the 9-day method. Again, these names might not be accurate, folks, but it typically describes what you're doing with the stone. Okay, so for this one, you want to get 2 bowls prepared. One is going to be a bowl with salt, sea salt, okay, in this case. And the other bowl is going to be a bowl filled with probably purified water in this case. Okay? And the first thing you want to do is take your stones and put them in the first bowl of salt. And you're going to leave it there for a period of 3 days. Okay? And then you're going to take the stone out and you're going to stick it in the bowl with water and leave it there for a period of 3 days. And then finally, you're going to take that out and you're going to set it out on the counter, probably a towel, dry the stones off, and you leave them out for a period of 3 days again. And this way, during that time, everything, the stone resets. And you could go ahead and consecrate it for your own purposes. And before I continue with this really quick, I just want to point out that you do want to be careful with the salt and the water methods that a lot of people practice, because there are some softer stones out there that don't take very well to being put in salt or being put in water. They can be dissolved, they can dissolve or just be damaged, corroded, whatever. And just be careful with that before you go ahead and just start throwing stones into salt water. You could probably ask the shop owners, hey, is it okay if I do that? Or you could probably research it online really quick to see if anybody has had, issues with something like that. But typically, I haven't seen anything like that, other than say like selenite and lodestones, and like I said, some of the softer stuff. I wouldn't do that with. But most other stones, they'll stand up to salt and water. And then the burial method, and this is one of those. Again, if you're worried about putting them in salt water, you can go ahead and do this method, and it works out really well. Okay, and just again, as it sounds, what you're going to do is you're going to bring your stones home, and if you have a property that you can do this on, you go outside, you dig a hole somewhere. It doesn't have to be a very deep hole, just a couple inches deep, and you put your stones in the hole and cover it up and leave them there and allow the earth energy to basically absorb and cancel out all the negative puke that's been coughed up all over the stones. And again, most people typically do 3 days, but I know people that will do like a week. And then you dig them back up, clean them off a little bit, and they've been reset. And at that point, you can consecrate them for your purposes. Now, of course, if you live in a city and you don't have, or you like an apartment complex and you don't have access to be able to do something like that, your other option, of course, if you want to do the burial method, is simply go out to a Walmart, any kind of department store that has a gardening center, buy a small pot, a small planting pot, buy a little bag of potting soil, consecrate the gardening soil there, put it in the pot, and then you can bury it inside your apartment for however long you want. And then that way they're right there. You don't have to worry about people coming by and asking, hey, what the hell are you doing? And then having them dig up your stones later when you're not around. And I have mentioned the ohm method, and this I did mention this in the my scrying mirror video, and of course it's worth mentioning here. Ohm, as we know, is a mantra, a very powerful mantra that, when used properly, does disintegrate negativity and negative energy. And you can go ahead and simply set your tablet, plug your tablet in, find an Om chant on YouTube, put it on continuous chant, continuous play, and leave it there for a period of 10 hours, 12 hours, however long you're going to work. And Om, using the Om chant is a very viable way to cleanse your stones as well. And then, of course, we have the smudging wand method, and a lot of us know about that. You just take your sweetgrass smudge, or cedar, or sage, or any combination thereof, and smudge it. A lot of people like to do it in a counterclockwise motion. All you're doing is visualizing all the negative energy being removed from the stone during that, and then you're good to go. That's probably a method you might want to use if you're in a hurry to be able to use it. Other than that, I can't see any other reason why. And then on to consecrating. And give me just a moment. I'm going to get another drink here. All right. Consecrating. I've talked a lot about consecrating in some of my other videos. And particularly the scrying mirror video, and I'm not going to get into too much of this, but there's a lot of people out there that like to think that when you I'm sorry, that's charging. Okay, so yeah, before you can use your stones and crystals in any type of project, you want to be able to go ahead and consecrate them. And think of it like this: when you're consecrating a stone or a crystal, you're basically programming them for what you want them to do for you, or for whatever particular purpose you're going to be using them for. Obviously, if you're using let's say emerald. Emerald is generally associated with love a lot. If you're going to be doing a ritual, say during the full moon for Venus or something like that, you might have an emerald there to assist, during the ritual, and you might want to consecrate that beforehand with Venus energy in order to work a little bit better. And emerald is for your purpose, work better for your purpose. Sorry. Emerald does have other functions as well, other than just attracting love, and other functions. So how you program your crystals and your stones is going to depend how they work for you. Okay, a lot of crystals and stones out there have multiple functions. It's good to have at least one good book out there on crystal and gemstone and metal magic, just so you know what you're kind of dealing with. A couple of them probably wouldn't hurt, but what I would not do regarding gemstone and metal magic is research the internet, because I've gone through so many pages on the internet, what is this stone good for and whatnot, and one person says one thing, one person says another. no offense to the internet folks, I mean, it's a great invention, but sometimes you get a lot of people out there that are just idiots, and they just, you know, just like fill it with a bunch of junk sometimes. And you have to be able to scour through the sites that are good and the ones that are bad. So do invest in a good book regarding that, okay? So back to consecrating. I don't mean to babble too much there. So one method, of course, is exposing the crystals or gemstones to the 5 elements, okay? And this is just, again, how it sounds. For this, you're going to need a couple of items. First, an incense burner with some charcoal and some type of temple incense. A lot of people use frankincense or frankincense and myrrh. You can go ahead and use those. That's totally fine. If you don't have an incense burner, you can simply use your breath. Your breath does represent wind and the element of air. And when you go ahead and get to that point, you know, I'm going to go through the whole consecration part for the 5 elements here. Just follow along with me and you'll get an idea. Oops. I seem to have backtracked a little bit there. There we are. Okay, also, sorry, I was just trying to find my spot there. The other thing you want to make sure you have on hand is going to be a candle to represent fire, obviously, and you want to be able to light that candle. For a lot of people, fire is represented in the direction, south direction, and some people would want to use a red candle for that. You can use white, that's totally fine though, if you don't have red candle. And then you do want to have a bowl of water with you and a bowl of salt or sanctified earth, okay? So you need, actually you need 5 items. The last one, which is spirit, is actually going to be optional because you do have a few options for spirit. So you're going to begin with the element of air, and you're going to pass the gemstone through the incense smoke if you have that. Otherwise, you're simply going to place it in your hand, and you're going to blow over it with your breath if you don't have the incense burner. And you're going to say something to the effect of, I purify and consecrate you with the power of the element of air. Or, as I said, if you don't have the incense burner, you can hold it in your hand. And then simply visualize that all of the unwanted energy is being blown away, either by the incense smoke or your breath. Okay, and then the next one you're going to pass the gemstone through is going to be the element of fire or the candle flame. Again, you're just going to do it briefly. You don't have to hold it there and sizzle the ends of your fingertips off. But again, you're just going to pass it through briefly. I purify and consecrate you in the power of the element of fire. Visualize. Then you visualize all the unwanted energies being burned away by the element of fire. And then with a bowl of water, you want to dip it in very quickly, pull it out, and say, I purify and consecrate you with the power of the element of water, and then visualize all the unwanted energy being washed away from the stone. And I think you're kind of getting the gist of it at this point. Okay. And then, of course, the last one, which is the bowl of salt or sanctified earth. Again, I purify and consecrate you with the power of the element of earth, and then visualize all the unwanted energies being absorbed by the salt or the earth in the bowl. And then finally, a lot of people will consecrate with the energy of spirit, and others not. It just depends if you want to. And I'll give you 3 methods here on how you can do that. The first one is using a sacred oil, or an oil intended for the purpose that the stone is going to be used for. For instance, if we're carrying a stone of pyrite in order to attract more money, then we would anoint it with a money oil or a success oil. And we would simply say, I purify and consecrate you with the power of the element of spirit, and then visualize that stone glowing in a light force intended purpose. Again, with the pyrite, we want to visualize a gold energy being surrounded by the stone. And the second method for consecrating with spirit is to simply direct spirit energy from a meditation into the stone. One method that I would suggest doing, since a lot of you have probably been following me on my channel for a while, if you do have Damon Brand's books, the Magical Riches, you have access to the image fire technique or the light from the darkness meditation technique. Both will work fine for something like this. Simply do your visualization, bring in that universal energy, and then in one or two bursts direct that universal energy into the stone or the crystal that you're using. And usually this is this meditation is meant for like a lot of sigils, and he does state that in a couple of his books. And he says, it's just universal energy. You don't have to direct it in any way, because when you're directing it on a sigil or a talisman, the wording and the imagery on the sigil or talisman is going to define that energy that you put into it. It's going to do its function. Okay. However, as I said, with the stone or a crystal, you kind of have to tell it what its purpose is going to be. So while you're directing that energy onto the stone, do go ahead and put your intent as far as like what you want that stone's purpose to be. Okay. And finally, the third method is to simply place a stone on the center of the altar, and you can invoke your god or goddess, whoever that may be, to lend their blessing onto the stone for you. Okay, and with that, we're going to get into charging the stone here really quick. And I'll be back in just a moment and get a drink of water again. Alright, and regarding charging of stones, there's a lot of people who think that when you consecrate a stone that you're also charging it. That is true to a certain extent. However, when we're talking about charging a stone, we're really referring to giving it like universal power or raw power for its function to keep flowing for you. And a lot of people do their recharges like around the full moon, which is a typical time for a lot of people who do this type of stuff. And again, if you're going to be charging a stone, I would say that the fastest technique, again, of course, is the image fire technique or the light from the darkness technique, which is great, again, because at that point, you're just going to perform your meditation, bring in that imagery, collect that universal energy, and again, in one or two bursts, you're simply just going to charge the stone at this time. Since you've already probably used it to consecrate the stone, you don't need to identify or give it any kind of purpose at that point. Again, here you're just you've already done that through the consecration, and now all you're doing is simply charging the stone at that point. You've had the stone for a while, you've carried it in your pocket or whatever, or it's been in a ring or a necklace, and now you need to go ahead and charge it. And really quick, before I start jumping ahead a little bit more, I do want to state this regarding your jewelry that you have, your rings, necklaces, whatever they may be, or even if you're carrying a stone in your pocket as an amulet, say like a piece of pyrite or something like that. Okay, these items do need to be cleansed on a regular basis. Okay, so you don't need to do the full method like sticking it in the water or whatnot. A smudge will basically do its job, at that point, or the mantra Om or something similar to that. Okay, and just visualize that you're removing all the psychic sludge that builds up on it, because what's going to happen when you wear this stuff on a daily basis, the people you come in contact with, that's going to have an effect on your jewelry. People are going to want to touch your jewelry. Oh, where'd you get this? Blah, blah, blah. Things are just going to collect on that type of stuff. So in order for the energy to keep flowing regularly, you do want to cleanse your items regularly. So keep that in mind while you're doing this, okay? Or while you're practicing that type of magic. And we're almost done with this video, folks. We're just going to talk a little bit about the Birthstones and the Zodiac here. And then there's recommended reading at the end. Birthstones, or what used to be referred to as astrogemology, is actually an ancient art that began with the Sumerians about 6,000 years ago, or a little bit more. And today we recognize that part of the world as the cradle of civilization in Mesopotamia. The Sumerians were very knowledgeable about their astrology at the time, and one particular star, the dog star, which we now refer to as Sirius A, was well known to them, and they knew all about that star's particular path and in the sky and whatnot. And they connected Sirius A with a blue stone, lapis lazuli. Okay. And from this, they ended up devising a system for assigning colors to the planets, and these associations became the basis for their gem theories. And that's more or less where we start getting our colors for, like, all the, like all the red stones are for Mars, and all the blue stones are for Jupiter, and sunstones are yellow and stuff like that. Okay, meanwhile, in their neighboring city of Ur, the Chaldeans use this information a step further by observing certain affinities linked between precious gems and the star seasons, their cultivation and their farming, and all that type of stuff. And they were very good record keepers, and they noticed a lot of recurring patterns that were applied during the use of their science. And so we basically have a lot of that information came down to us to this point today. So birthstones have been traditionally correlated with every month of the year, and this actually does come from the Bible itself, the book of Exodus, chapters 28 and 39. And the passage does read, let's see, and he made the breastplate artistically woven like the workmanship of the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and of fine woven linen. They made the breastplate square by doubling it. The span was its length, and the span its width when doubled. And they set it in 4 rows of stones. A row of sardius, a topaz, and an emerald was the first row. And just as a note, folks, I don't know what sardius is. That might be sardonyx is what it might be typically today. Anyways, continuing. The second row, a turquoise, a sapphire, and a diamond. Third row, jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. And the fourth row, a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They were enclosed in settings of gold in their mountings. There were 12 stones according to the names of the sons of Israel, according to their names, engraved like a signet on each one with its own name according to the 12 tribes. and that is in accordance to the New King James Version of the Bible, Exodus chapter 39, 8 through 14 verses. And of course, these 12 stones from the famous breastplate were thus linked with the 12 stones of the Zodiac, and thus became our birthstones we have today in our modern tradition. As always, it is suggested that your birthstone, your birthstone is not suggested, though it is of course a major source of power for you, and every person should have at least one piece of jewelry with their birthstone in it. Okay, and for a lot of us, sometimes that first piece of stone is like a graduation ring, from high school or something like that. A lot of people get their birthstone put into that. It's something you might want to hold on to. Okay, and the stones for the Zodiac are garnet for January, which symbolizes light and a loyal heart and lasting affection. February is the amethyst, a sexy and sensitive stone, has been referred to as Cleopatra's royal ring. March, you have the aquamarine, which is a soothsayer stone, or an alternate, which is the bloodstone, also known as the martyr stone. April is a diamond, traditional engagement ring, power of love. May is emerald, a green stone of protection. June is pearl, moonstone, and alexandrite. All are moonstones and all are sea stones, by the way, for June. July is a ruby, a most highly prized gem, symbol of the essence of life. August is peridot, ancient symbol of the sun, or sardonyx, an intelligence enhancing stone. And I may not have pronounced that correctly, folks. I do apologize if I butchered that. September is a sapphire, represents the purity of the soul. October, opal, which contains the beauty of all other gems, or it's tourmaline, which is known as the stone of inspiration. Finally, we have November, which is topaz, a stone of royalty, also named for the Sanskrit word for fire. And in December, we have two stones, ending with turquoise, said to bring luck, and zircon, the traveler's stone. Excuse me. And that's pretty much it for the presentation, folks. Regarding recommended reading, I do recommend two of the following books: Magic of Crystals and Gems, Unlocking the Supernatural Power of Stones by Sheridan Greenleaf. This was published in 2016 by Mango Media Incorporated, and it's a very, very wonderful book. I do have a copy of that book myself. Does cover a lot of good information that you don't get in a lot of other books or where you can find online. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in that particular book, she does mention that Scott Cunningham was her teacher regarding the use of crystals and gemstones and metals, and therefore she says that she owes a lot to him regarding that, and therefore I do recommend his book as well, Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Crystal, Gem, and Metal Magic, of course, by Scott Cunningham. The second edition was republished back in 1998 and was done by Llewellyn Publications. Those would be my two recommendations for that. So with that, folks, I'm going to go ahead and call this video over at this point. I do apologize for its length, and I do appreciate for those of you who sat through this video for its length. As always, I do appreciate your subscription to my channel and you watching my videos, and encourage you to subscribe and like my videos as well. And with that, have a good night, folks. Take care, and infernal blessings. Bye.